Hello, Anita here. Today I'm going to answer one of my most asked questions, and that is how I make my granny squares. And I've got a technique which will allow you to make granny squares with only one tail to sew in, no matter how many rounds you do. So I'm making this blanket at the moment that I've designed with the Crochet Studio app, and here is my pattern, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But if you want to make along with me today, then you will need a crochet hook. I'm using a 4mm hook because it's the right size for my yarn, which is Sirdar Country Classic. You will need some scissors and you will need a yarn needle. Okay, let's have a look at how I designed this pattern. I absolutely love the look of random granny square blankets, but I find it really hard to be random, and I know that lots of you do too. So I'm going to just talk you through how you can make granny square patterns really quickly and easily with just a few taps using the Crochet Studio app. So I'm going to open the app on my phone. I'm going to Toolbox and select Granny Squares, and I'm just going to choose one of the palettes that I've pre-made and saved on my app. So this is the one that I'm using for this blanket, and then I'm going to go to blanket settings and give the app some information about what I want to make. So the pattern I made is 10 squares by 10 squares, and each square has 5 rounds. So I'm just going to use the sliders to give it that information, and it's giving me an estimate that my finished blanket size will be 120 centimetres by 120 centimetres. I'm going to save changes, and it's given me a blank of my 10 by 10 blanket. And what I can do now is either drag and drop colours onto it. So if you've got a specific arrangement of colours that you want to use, you can drag colours anywhere onto the blanket, and you can zoom in and add more however you want. And you will see that it's giving a real-time estimate of how much yarn is required for each of those rounds. Or you can click randomize, make some magic, and it will do all of that for you. And the app is doing its very best to make sure that colours don't touch, and it's using an even amount of each yarn. So you can keep clicking make some magic, and it will give you a unique pattern every time, completely different. And when you're happy, so I like that one, I am going to tap generate pattern, and now I can add some other information and change some details. So if I go to advanced settings, I can toggle on printer friendly, and that will just give me a reduced pattern file that's easy to print. I can add a designer name, so it's got my designer name in here, and you can change that to yours. You can choose UK or US crochet terminology, and you can change the measurement system from metric to imperial, whatever suits you best. And you also have a list here of the yarns that you would need to make that blanket. So I'm just going to tap generate PDF, and while that's doing that, I'll just show you what you get. You get a pattern file that has a list of all the yarns that you need. It has written crochet instructions to make the squares, and it also gives you a square by square breakdown so that you know which colours to use, you know what you're making, you don't have to worry about what's coming next. You can tick off at the end when you're done, and it also gives you a layout to tell you where to position the square in your blanket. This is just one of the many features of the app. It's free to download, so the best way to find out what it can do is to try it for yourself. Search Crochet Studio on the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. I'm going to start my granny square with a slip knot and pop it on my hook, and I start my square by chaining 3. 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to pop my hook under both loops of the first chain to form a ring. And slip stitch to join. And now I'm going to work the first round of my granny square into that little central ring, and I'm going to work over this tail to hold it into place. So I start by chaining 2, 1, 2, and that counts as my first treble crochet. So now I'm going to pop my tail to the side and make 2 more treble crochets into that central ring. So 1, 2, and that is the first side of my little square I'm making. So I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2. So now I can turn the corner, and I'm going to make 3 more treble crochets into that central ring. So that's 2 and 3. So now I've got 2 sides and a little corner. I'm going to repeat, so chain 2 and then 3 more treble crochet, 2, 3. That's 3 sides, and once more, so I'm going to chain 2, 3 more treble crochet, and then to finish off I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to slip stitch to join, and I do this slightly differently to how you may have seen granny squares done before. So you started with 2 chains and they count as the first treble crochet. Instead of slip stitching into one of those chains, which is how you may have seen it done before, I slip stitch under both loops of the first real treble. So this is that first proper treble crochet, and I slip stitch by putting my hook under both loops and slip stitching into there. And the reason I do this is because it gives a nearly invisible join. So I'm just going to finish off this round by snipping my yarn, just going to pull that tail through, and that is my first round completed. And this little tail here, because we've worked over it all the way round, you don't need to sew that one in. If your little central ring looks a little bit gapey, you can give that a pull like a little drawstring. Oh, whoops. And you can just snip that one off, and that will not come undone. So that's our first round done, and now I'm going to show you how to join the next colour without an end to sew in. Okay, round 2, and we're going to deal with this tail so we don't have to sew it in at the end. I always turn my squares after every round, and the reason I do this is it prevents the square from getting that twisted, skewed appearance you get if you keep going round and round in the same direction. I also like the way it looks, so I turn my square, and then we are going to join the next colour over the top of this one. So I've got my next colour, and I'm going to pull through a loop of that colour in the corner space, and I'm going to tie a double knot over the top of that first tail. So nice and tight. I'm just going to give that little pink tail a pull so it's laying flat. And then I'm going to insert my hook and pull up a loop of my second colour, chain 2. That counts as my first treble crochet, and then I'm going to work the rest of my corner over the top of both tails. So a second treble crochet and a third, and then chain 2 for the corner, and 3 more treble crochets in the same space to form the corner. And then if you're familiar with making granny squares, I'm just going to make the rest of the square in the way that you usually would. So no chains here in between clusters. I like my granny squares to look nice and tight, so I don't chain in between sets of trebles. So 3 more treble crochet, chain 2, and 3 more, and again, so there's 3 corners. We've got 1 more to do, so that's 1, 2, 3 treble crochet, chain 2, and then the final 3, 1, 2, 3. And then in the same way as the first round, I'm going to fasten off by putting my hook under both loops of that first treble. And pull through. So now if I turn over, on this side I've tied my tails in and I've worked over them, and they are not going to come unravelled, so you can just snip those off, and no need to sew them in at the end. And I've been making granny squares this way for about 8 years, and in that time none of them have unravelled in the wash, so don't be concerned that they are going to come undone. This is perfectly secure. And from now on, every round you add, no matter how many rounds you add to your square, you will always deal with this end in the same way. So I'm going to pop my hook under both loops of this first treble here. So pop my hook in and pull the yarn through, and then I'm going to repeat under the next treble. So hook under both loops, pull through, and then once more hook under both loops, pull the yarn through. So now my yarn is in the corner space. You can't see it along the edge, and I'm now going to turn, and I'm ready to start my next round. So I've got my next colour here, and this is the same as the round before, so I'm going to pop my hook in and pull through the new colour. I'm going to tie a double knot nice and tight, and I'm tying that over this tail that we've just brought across. So now I take both tails to the side because we're going to crochet over them. I'm going to pull up a loop of yarn, and I'm just pulling that up to the side of my knot, so I'm going to be covering my knot with my corner stitches, and then as before chain 2, and that's the first treble crochet. So 2 more, and then I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to complete my corner. So 1, 2, 3, and this time I've got extra spaces to fill in, so I'm going to make 3 treble crochet in this space here. Again, there are no chains between clusters, that keeps it nice and tight. And just make sure when you move away from the corner that you are not crocheting over these tails. We're not carrying them along because we don't want them to be visible. So don't crochet over your tails, and then work round the rest of the square in the same way as before. So I'm at my last corner now. So that's my 3 treble crochet, my 2 chains, three more treble crochet. Is that 3? I can't count. Yeah, that's 3. And then 3 more in that space. And then I'm going to fasten off by putting my hook under both loops of the first treble. And fasten off. And then if I just turn over, you can see that I've worked my first corner over my tails, but I didn't carry my tails along the side, just that corner, and they are now secure, and you can snip those off. So there we have 3 rounds, and we still only have 1 tail to sew in, and you can keep adding as many rounds as you like, and you only ever have this outside tail to sew in. So I'm just going to show you that corner one more time. So I'm going to take my hook, pop it in the treble under both loops right next to my tail, pull the yarn through, and again, and again. So I've taken my yarn to the corner, turn over, and then join the new colour. So pull through, double knot nice and tight. I take my tails to the side because I'm going to crochet over them. Pull up a loop, 2 chains, that's my first treble. Chain 2 to turn the corner. Three more trebles. And they are all worked over those 2 tails. So now I'm just going to move on round the square, and I'm just going to take care that I'm not working over those tails. So I'm going to take those out of the way and continue making my square. So last 3 treble crochet, 1, 2, 3, slip stitch to join under those 2 loops, and fasten off. And I'm just going to snip off those tails. And you can carry on adding as many rounds as you like. You can keep going and make a giant granny square if you want to, as many rounds as you like, and you will only ever have this one tail to deal with. So my pattern I'm making, my squares have 5 rounds, so I'm going to add 1 more round to this, and then I'm going to show you how to sew in this one remaining tail. Here's my 5 round square that I need for my pattern. I'm just going to snip off the last 2 ends, and now we just have this one tail to sew in. So I've got my yarn needle, and here's a little tip for easy threading of the yarn needle. If you just fold the yarn over the end of the needle, pull the needle out and pinch between your fingers, you will then be able to just pop the yarn onto the needle. I'll do that again. Just fold the yarn over the end of the needle, pull out and pinch between your fingers, and then the yarn will just easily slide through the eye of the needle. No poking required. Okay, so I'm just going to flip this over, and I'm just going to pass my needle under the loops of the treble crochet. So you can see there's these 2 loops on the back of the treble crochet. I'm just going to pass my needle through there and pull through. Don't pull so tight that you distort this edge. And then I'm just going to pop my needle under the corner stitches and just make sure that they're not visible on the front. They should just be under the back loops of the stitches. And then I'm just going to pass my needle backwards, but I'm just going to catch one of these threads on the end here to make sure that my yarn doesn't pull out. So I'm just going to pop the needle under the loops again and pull it through, and that's all that's required to hold it in place. So I'm just going to snip that off, and that is my square complete.